hit the red button. That's my job, and we almost forgot.
I could stop saying.
Oh, this bar. I was looking at the green lines along the top. Okay, wonderful. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Kathy. I work at Oomph. We're located in Providence, Rhode Island. We are a full-service web agency. I'm part of the Drupal team. Oh, come on in. Just getting started, so we'll just rewind a little bit. Anyone else in the hallway coming up, do you know? No?
Yes.
Yes.
Just walked right by, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
False alarm.
Alright, we'll start over again. Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm a UX engineer at Oomph. We're located in Providence, Rhode Island, and we are a full-service web agency. I'm part of the Drupal team and the front-end team, where I focus primarily on site building and theme implementation, along with accessibility and other small projects like that. So today, I'm going to show, I think I have about 8 samples of different patterns that we kind of reuse throughout site building that might have stumbling blocks to meet WCAG 2.0 accessibility standards. So I'm going to talk about some types of users that we think about when we build our sites and when we're doing remediation work. Here I have 5 users, kind of groups listed. I'll be primarily focusing on the first 3 in this presentation, but want to mention the other ones. So you have your average user. That's who we primarily build for. They can use the mouse, they can use the keyboard, and they can see and they can hear. And then we have a keyboard user. This user might be someone who has a physical disability, such as MS, or it could be a new parent with a baby in their arms trying to use a computer. Or you might be out on a train and you're on your phone, so you have limited physical mobility. And then you have screen reader user. They are the blind user. They don't see what's on the screen, so they rely on devices and screen readers to give them information and how to interact with the website. But then you don't want to forget about your deaf listeners, especially if you have audio and video on your site. You'll want to make sure that you have written out transcripts for both, so that someone who can't hear can read what is being said. And then you have one I have started to think about more often, and I saw a really good conversation on Twitter happening about learning disabilities as an accessibility kind of block, where too much information is an overload to users and they just can't digest what you're trying to give them. Or if there's too much graphics or animation, they might miss some kind of interaction on the site that requires further information or something like that. So we want to be conscious of all those users, and when we're creating a fix or doing our work, sitting down and kind of thinking through these user scenarios and put yourself in their shoes for a little while. So, font icons, they've kind of become the way to do things, especially pull in social media icons into a menu that you have your come visit us links. And so we tend to concatenate the icon class right on the, I'm going to go like this. Does that make it easier to read? It's a little bigger. So we usually just add on our icon class and then let the font icon fonts, add their befores and stuff like that to give you the visual font. When screen readers read this, they'll read unavailable, or visually they'll get a broken icon class. If I believe if there's an emoji that matches, it will display the emoji, but if there isn't one, it won't show one. So that's something to think about. So what we do is we actually add extra markup so that we can display content appropriately to users. So here you'll see we've added a span class. We've added a span class for our icon and for our text. And something to note, we're starting to use ally text versus a visually hidden class, because we want to think about this and consciously or unconsciously think about this stuff being read. So we're trying to say it's still text, not.
What is that? What's that? I don't know what that is.
So this is ally. That's the accessibility standards, and just the general terminology of getting things up to standards for ally and WCAG standards. The shorthand ally is a lot. There's a lot of tools using that name. So yeah, A11. So we're using it as, instead of saying this is visually hidden, we're saying this is just alternative text.
What is the library you're calling from? Like you want to use in these classes?
So if I were tying into maybe Font Awesome, using Font Awesome classes or other font libraries, Font Awesome's kind of the standard these days. You can tie into some of these classes, but these are just fake classes that I've made just based on them naming classes, so that you can get a sense of kind of what kind of information we're talking about social media stuff, we're talking about the link section, and we're talking about the icon in text, and then we can do some variations of that same thing if I want to use a different icon. So what we're doing here, and I don't know, I feel like I did not update this slide, so I'm actually gonna swap over to my real slide. Sorry about this. So you can, no, it is. So what we're doing is, this should be up there. Using the area hidden tag will hide the content from the screen readers. So, sorry, I thought I updated this and it isn't. This is presentations and live demos, right? So, what I'm doing here is allowing the link to have text that will visually be hidden from users who can see it using the ally text, but will be read by the screen reader. So when the screen reader goes to it, it will say, follow us on social media site or something, letting the user know what that is. And then you'll have your link title So when someone hovers over it, you'll see visit our social media, and you're letting them know that the link will open in a new window, which is very important to do. But for the icon, we put it on its own span so that we're able to add the area hidden true tag, which will keep screen readers from reading it or from displaying that broken icon text. So if you can get into the markup of your menus when you're insert in some icons to put this, which with Drupal 8 in the Twig templates, you can get into the menu structure much easier than in past versions of Drupal. So you can get some markup like this, or you can just add that stuff right into a block in Drupal, which you might be doing. Just note that your empty spans, if you're not allowing full HTML, the site might automatically strip those empty spans out. So a way around it is just adding a no break space tag, and it will keep that empty span there. So something to think about. I do have some links in here to some menu templates that we use. You can get to the menu level information within that template, so you can add unique classes per menu level, per element, which is really useful for adding a lot of these menu uniqueness stuff. Onto headers. So, headers, you have what you want to do the correct way and make it HTML semantically correct. Use your header structure, but the design does not allow you to always use your header structure. So we found a compromise, and for the past year, we've been using this Alpha Bravo class naming convention, so we can get any header style to output as any other header style. So I have some sample HTML, CSS in here. So we have all our header styles, but then we just concatenate the H1 in our alpha class, in our H2 with our Bravos, so that...
Quick question?
Sure.
You're not finding that some of the tools are bringing you as text displayed as a header that's not a header?
All of these are headers, so we will be using them semantically in the correct order. So like when you need to use your H2, you can use it, but you can use a, you need your H2, but it needs to look like your H3 class. You can just add a Charlie class to your header class, and it will just append your Charlie classes to your H2.
That looks more confusing than that. I would find that confusing. To actually remember and to use, like.
And I'm thinking your content editor experience, because typically
Yeah.
it's not someone who's doing the front end who's actually having to experience it, unless you're building it into your editor.
We are. So we're adding it into the CK editor as classes. So I'll add something similar to, I don't have it here. So I'll do, so your H2s can get your alpha class, your H2s can get your Charlie class, your H2s can get your Delta class, and kind of, it's a bit of a logic kind of in there.
Is Charlie significant of something?
We're just using military alpha numeric phonetics. So Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. That's kind of A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
So large.
So H1,
Larger,
H2,
largest.
H3, H4, H5, H6.
So they're thinking, I want this to look, I want this to be alpha.
Yeah, so you can, Yeah, so you can say, here's your style guide of headers styles, and you might want this, it has to be an H2 because semantically it should be, but you don't want a bigger, bolder thing. You want kind of a smaller styled H4 that has the underline in the uppercase text decoration, and you want that look. You can give that look to your H2 and still be semantic for screen readers and search engine
Is
optimization.
the size gonna vary?
Yep, it will. So it will use. So as you can see in the samples, these are all the different header tags, and they're using this class. So if you think about, instead of Bravo, it could be header class 2.
So the person who has sight, who scans, don't they use the size of text to decide what's most important based on size?
Yep, and design-wise, sometimes designers go a little off of what semantically should be there. So you have to kind of work with what the designer gives you, but be semantically correct. And this is how we're kind of marrying the two.
Can't always be.
Yeah, you can't just have your cake and eat it too. You gotta like take a bite and share.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been using that. We start most of our sites with a set of styles that we call our scaffold, and we kind of just grab a lot of stuff. So pre-styled things out of that. We have that on GitHub as well, so there's a link in here for that. But moving on to like a teaser card, I feel like that's another big piece of content that we're using a lot these days. So there are, all my samples will show how we do it and what options of ways to make it more accessible. So in my samples I have a image, a title, a description, and a link. And they'll just be displayed differently based on accessibility. So I'm going to close this so you can see the code a little bit better. So we usually will take a teaser card and wrap our image around a link, have our title. Sometimes we may or may not link our title. We'll have a description, and we'll have a text link below the description that might look like a button that says read more. And that works for the average user, but for screen readers, and I think SEO kind of is leaning towards not liking this as well, but having two links in the same content going to the same place. You should just have one link for that piece of content. So there are a few ways that we can achieve that. And a lot of thing with accessibility is that it's kind of gray. There's a few ways to do it. It's a little subjective. It's kind of like Drupal. You can do things 4 or 5 different ways depending how you want to do it. So the first option is wrapping everything in a link, making the whole thing clickable, and then you get your hover states based off of the entire container. And with that, you want to really make sure you have a good alt tag. That should be title, and alt text and title text, and that. So when someone tabs to that card, only one thing gets tabbed instead of how we usually do it. You might get the image focus, tab to the title focus, tab to link text focus. Where if you have a card, you're going to go from card to card to card to card to card. Then there's options where you can have just the text link. There's give and take between those two options, I think. A lot of users, desktop users, the average user, expects the image to be a link nowadays. and not just the button. It's the bigger click point, whatnot.
And the
But-
title.
Yeah.
Title to be
So either one, any of those, you're kind of, users are used to those things being links. So if you're just doing the text link, it might hinder some users or take them that extra second to think about what they're doing. But with full card link, when you're on mobile, now there's a bigger like active spot, and you might accidentally trigger. Even on desktop, when you have a full card, if you click in the space that's in between the button and the text, you're still gonna go someplace. So you kind of need to know your audience and what you need to achieve. But there is a way where you can have your cake and eat it too, I guess. You just need to do a little bit of work for it. So what you'd have to do is add a tab index of -0 so that that link is now out of the tabbing order of the keyboard for that user. Then you have to do area hidden true so that doesn't get read by any of the shortcut lists or anything like that. Depending on the user's settings in JAWS, the full initial page read through sometimes reads the whole DOM no matter what, and will ignore some of this. So you kind of also have to take that into consideration. JAWS and screen readers have so many personal settings that you might not be able to achieve this for everyone, but getting it 90% of the way is way better experience than they are getting now. So with that, you'll still get the image link state for hover average user, but you don't get the reading or the keyboard option for that image. So there's 3 ways to kind of achieve that, depending on your users, your audience, your client, your design. So it's your time, because the last option is time sensitive, and you got to test it to make sure it works.
So do you do like user testing? Like, do you find that you've tried one of the 3 or all of the 3?
It's a good question. I haven't specifically tested those 3 options to see a variety. It will depend on some of our work. A lot of our accessibility work's been remediation work, so we have to see what's already there, what we can do, and how much time does this project allow us to spend on this. So those parameters will help us decide which option here is the right option for that specific situation.
I know it's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of gray stuff, and there's not a lot like concrete out there to say, yes, this is how you fix it. So that's what this is trying to do, kind of give you a guide way to less options than what are out there. Again, you have Twig Templates in Drupal 8, making things so easy to reuse patterns and stuff like that. So, another component is required fields. They're usually required in things. Not all of them are required, and usually we will set something up like this, where we put an asterisk and say fields are required. Users have been trained, the average user has been trained to know what this means. But it doesn't give enough context to the non-sighted user, should say. So here are some options that we use. Real quick, we got, you notice this form doesn't have any visible asterisks, and this one does. But I'm going to close this up so we can look at the code a little clearer. So you'll notice that in the first one, we are explicitly saying everything is required except this one field. The user knows what's expected of them when they enter this form. But we do have things like the required here. We have this area described by will read this text that is hidden visually, but is there for screen readers. So there's a couple different ways that the user will know that this is required without visually seeing it. And input fields will read as whatever the label is, whatever the title text is, input required. So the user will know based off this information. And then another way is by letting the user know what the asterisk actually means. The fields with the asterisks are required. And then you can use them like you've been normally using them. It's nice to have the additional area described, but at minimum, the required tag. Oh, look at that. That's a broken tag. So I'm going to show you some examples of the search box, since those are usually on most sites. So usually you have a label that's hidden. It looks like search. You'll have an input with your placeholder text, and you'll have a submit button. Screen readers will read this as search : because it is a type of search. It will say search input, search for, search submit. So you know there's search stuff going on with this form, but that's how JAWS will read this form out to you when you tab into it and then tab into the button. So by adding a role of search, that just gives users that much more clarification of what this section of the site will do. And then you have a hidden label that says enter a phrase or keyword to search the site. Users now know what the parameters are and what kind of content they're actually searching. Again, you'll get the regular input, search for, but you'll notice we have some visually hidden text inside our button. So the button will read submit search button, which in a conversational sense that feels better. If I closed my eyes and wanted someone to tell me to search something, I'd rather hear the second way, more of a conversational sense. The next are radio buttons and checkboxes. They're always in our sites, in our forms, but I feel like they could kind of be the bane of our existence. They're kind of frustrating, especially when you need to make them custom and make them look good. There are some custom solutions out there that do not require JavaScript, and they allow good markup. So there are solutions, and I believe I have a link in the reference. If not, I will add it. But let's look at some forms. So this is kind of a basic radio button form. Do you like coffee? Nope. Yes. No, I love it. That's how that one would read. Then you get checkboxes. Please send me pizza, cake, ice cream. But if you go back, tab back, you go cake, pizza, cake, ice cream, cake, pizza. And you kind of know what you're going through there because you heard the beginning. But when you embrace field sets and legends, which I didn't before, but I do now, just so you know, it makes screen readers read this information so much more elegantly. So what it does is it will read the radio buttons as, do you like coffee? Nope. Do you like coffee? Yes. Do you like coffee? No, I love it. There's a lot more context to the user, especially if they go back and forth between the options that they have. Same with the checkboxes. Using the field set in the legend, it gets read, please send me pizza, please send me cake, please send me ice cream. And you'll get that context when you're tabbing through or checking boxes. And the inputs and labels are just using the 4, which comes standard with the Drupal forms. It's kind of the basic thing nowadays. And it just ties to your ID of your input. So those two things talk to each other.
Just curiosity. Did you guys have this all those like chat box, radio button as a content library? So every designer, every developer can use that.
This is on GitHub and CodePen, so you can go to the URLs that will be here, and you can grab that code and use it if you want. So, yep. Next we have links and buttons. Just high-level thing to remember. Links go somewhere, buttons do something. You remember that? And the reason why we want to use buttons and links whenever we can, they natively have keyboard interactions. They know what to do when tab to. They know what the space bar means, they know what the enter key means, they know what the escape key, they know what keyboard interactions do. And if you don't use a native link or a button, you're going to have to add those functionalities in with JavaScript.
You can make it look like a button.
Yeah.
With background color, but that's not making it a button.
Yep, it's not making it an actual button. So, we tend to make links look like buttons, like on teaser cards, and we'll just add a class, and we'll have our link and our learn more. That's fine. And then we have any other element or tag, whether it be a span or a div or a and usually it will be some kind of JavaScript trigger to open up a mobile menu, a search form. And those usually just have a class and some text that usually gets hidden and with the font icon displayed instead. So that's kind of standard. With the links that look like buttons, those are totally cool to stay that way because they bring you somewhere. They might look like a button, but they're still a link. I would just make sure your title tag is more descriptive than just learn more, especially because there's usually 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of these on a page, and when you print out links, it will just have 10 learn more buttons, where if you get a little descriptive, learn more about the new blue chair we have, you'll see all the options right there when you're looking at the link list. And then your anything that looks like a button, that's not right. Sorry about that. last minute changes, right? So let's make this actually work. So we'll do, see that. So we'll make this non-good button an actual button. So first off, you could go roll button, and now this span class will interact like a button because it's taken over that role. Or you really just make it a button, and now it acts like a button. And you'd want to put your span for your icon class here. You'd want your area hidden to be true because that's your hidden icon font. That's going to display here, and we're going to want to add a span here that holds the search, and we'll give it the class of our ally text, and this will be, this button will open a dialog modal with a search form in it. That way, we get that information read. So this button will open a dialog modal with a search form in it. The user know what's going to happen. There's a new layer to what's happening, and then you let them know what they get to do. And once that opens, you should have a focus state on your search form that will read, please enter the keyword or search phrase for the site. So yeah, you can either make your buttons buttons, which is always the way to do it, but if you can't for some reason, add the roll button. It will start to act like a button. So we have some reference materials here. There's a lot out there. This is just a handful of ones that in the past year of doing remediation work on some of our sites, I found myself going to a couple times, multiple times I should say, not just a couple, multiple times referencing their samples, stuff like that. So I will quickly run through some of them. So this Ally style guide is really nice. It gives you the things that you kind of normally look for, kind of like what we did, but they give you a bunch of different options, and then it will actually let you give you markup, so you can see they're using the visually hidden, we're using the ally text, but they have a lot of stuff like adding when the button is pressed through ally, the area tags and stuff like that. So this will give you kind of all the things that's possible for some of these different reusable patterns. Also used this this site for they just gave simple samples of bits and really called out when using area described by and stuff like that, or roles. I found it useful and helpful in letting me figure out the difference between area labels and area labeled by and area described by, and when you should be using those types of things. So that was helpful with this site. This site is a good just checklist of the guidelines in very simple summary of what's under those standards. Mozilla has a really good area page. All the roles that you can use are here, and a good amount of them link into more information. I found myself coming back to this page a lot. My company, every once in a while, we do hack days where we just do self-development work. And this is a project that came out of that. There were a lot of decent color contrasting tools out there, but we work with clients that have a pre-existing brand. And we wanted to know if their brand colors were actually accessible to each other. And a lot of those tools were just a one-to-one check. So Brandon, that's like half my team right there, helped work on this. We created this that gives a quick high level on white on black, and then within that set of colors, which colors are the best match. They might fail, but they are the best match out of that bunch. So we found this tool helpful. We have it out on GitHub as well, so feel free to use it and share it, because it is helpful when you have pre-existing brand colors. Then there's just a expand and collapse samples here. These were nice and basic that I could open it up in Internet Explorer running JAWS and just see how those toggled. So I actually referenced these a bit. So at OOMF, we're hiring. We're looking for UX engineers, web engineers, and digital project managers. We are located in Providence, Rhode Island, and you can apply at oomph.is/people/careers. Now, if you have any questions on anything, I know we answered some throughout, but yeah.
Thank you. That was really very good. And
You're welcome.
It's something I wish my company would be more interested in doing, and I've tried to do for a long time. They're pretty happy that Drupal offers a good does take us a little further than we've been in the past into the accessibility and
Definitely.
stuff. What I did try to do, there was a movie that I watched called Music Within, based on the true story of Richard Pimentel. He was probably too young for this, but he had been in Vietnam and came back with a disability. His hearing had gone, and so he was a huge advocate for accessibility, and he helped to get the Americans with Disabilities Act going with President Bush at that time. But what it did, it really showed the mentality at that time of things that we take as being like, why wouldn't you have a ramp? Back then, they didn't think like that. Like restaurant owners didn't want to have the expense of putting in a ramp, and it showed, like his friend who had cerebral palsy, had the struggles that it took to bring him into that diner, and how everybody was appalled. They were uncomfortable eating with him there. But the guy was brilliant, and he was funny, and it just put a face on a mentality back then that we would be abhorred by, that people felt that way. And I likened it to the way that we would shut out people who need to be able to access the internet.
Yes.
People who are homebound. And my mother was disabled, and so you know what I mean. So it's an excellent movie. It's very good. It's got a great soundtrack, and it's something that I think everyone in the industry would appreciate who's interested in accessibility.
Are you on Twitter? Can you post that to
On LinkedIn, I think I have accepted my Thank you.
I wanna-
I will.
Yeah, post it to the NetCamp thing so
Okay.
everybody who's in this room can get that
Fabulous.
link and
It is
see
true.
it.
That's what makes
And
it.
that's something that I've really tried to do is step back and think about being in the shoes of someone else, which is a little easier for me as I do have people in my life and I've worked with people when I was in high school with disabilities, so it's a little easier for me to step in their shoes, but it's nice to sit back and be like, what if I lost all these fingers on this hand because I was silly and was playing with firecrackers? Like, that would change your whole life and how you interacted with technology nowadays. So when you're doing these things, just do these little exercises with yourself. Close your eyes. What would you want someone to read to you? Like,
It's a good exercise to try JAWS. You can download it for free.
NVDA is kind of close to JAWS. JAWS is still the standard for screen readers, but NVDA is a free option for Windows. But again, they're all slightly different. They read things slightly different. They display things slightly different. Same with Apple VoiceOver. But JAWS is the standard and should be the standard, I think, across the board. But you'll see I just use some descriptive words for I don't think I showed that page of my presentation about me. Sorry. Let's rewind. I'm Kathy. You can find me KBeck303 on most of the social media. I've been at my company since 2014. Been working with Drupal since version 4.7. That's about a decade ago now. I am older than you probably think. I have a cross-eyed cat. He's on the fat side. And I've gotten to fall in love with audiobooks. So I have these images here. And you'll see I just wrote some descriptions, and they're kind of funny, like an up-close photo of an Asian-looking woman wearing glasses. She's wearing a green shirt and has a pair of headphones on. She's smirking and looking at the camera. I'm like, if I was listen to a screener, I'd be like, oh, thank you, person. Like, that's better than woman image. So yeah, a very cross-eyed cat peeking his head out from underneath a freshly made bed. Much better than cat JPEG. So think about that. You can have some fun with some of these things and work on some of your descriptive writing skills. So again, this is up on GitHub and CodePen. It's really just CodePen and GitHub /KBeck303. Yep, grab those, feel free to use them, and if you want samples that you've been using on a regular, feel free to fork it and do a PR, and we can get your code sample into that repo as well. So yeah, we need to help each other out. There's a lot of information, but not a lot of clarity on the solution. So